reign of Louis XIV, a mysterious prisoner was held in French custody under tight security. Known as the Man in the Iron Mask, his true identity has eluded historians and captivated imaginations for centuries. Forced to wear a mask, perhaps to conceal his face or his likeness to someone significant, this enigmatic figure inspired countless theories. Some speculate he was a royal relative, potentially the king's twin, hidden to avoid a power struggle. Others suggest he was a disgraced nobleman privy to dangerous secrets. Novelists like Alexander Dumas immortalized him, blending fact with fiction in the Vicomte of Bragelonne. Though official records are sparse,
this is Leonardo DiCaprio, one of the greatest actors of the world. In this scene, he was playing in the film The Man in the Iron Mask, released in 1998. Director the great Randall Wallace. But you must know that the Man in the Iron Mask did existed. It's not a legend. He really existed. So, who was the Man in the Iron Mask? Here we see Leonardo DiCaprio, who played both the role of the evilish King Louis XIV, called Sun King, and his twin. In the movie, he made him prisoner in the Bastille and forced to wear an iron mask to hide his face. But in the real story, who was the real man in the Iron Mask? Let's discover it together. My followers, friends, viewers, welcome back, or welcome if it's the first time that you are watching my YouTube channel, my paranormal and mystery TV. Did you know that the Man in the Iron Mask really did existed? In few minutes we will, oh my god, the Man in the Iron Mask. In few minutes we will return to my personal computer to watch really many videos. But now I must read you some important official documents about the Man in the Iron Mask. The identity of the Man in the Iron Mask is one of the history's most enduring and fascinating mysteries. The Man in the Iron Mask did existed. The mysterious prisoner was a man called Eustache Duger. That easily was a fake name given to the prisoner. Or there was a mistake about the pronouns, even if they were in France, because Eustache Doger could be danger. However, this man was arrested on July the 19th, 1669, because of King Louis the 14th order. He was taken to Pignerol jail, where he stayed for 3 weeks. His jailer was Saint Mars, and will always be his jailer for all his lifetime. Saint Mars was a former sergeant of the Musketeers for, as I told you, his lifetime, and in all the other 3 prisons in which he was moved. The last one was the Bastille. The prisoner was forced to wear an iron mask for all of his life, and closed behind 3 doors, and so situated that the prisoner couldn't be heard. It was forbidden to know the real name, and even his only jailer couldn't ask him his real name or have a conversation with him. Otherwise, he would have been condemned to death penalty. He was held in 4 prisons: Pignerol in the Italian Alps, exiles always in the Italian Alps, the island of Sainte Marguerite off the coast of Cannes, and the Bastille in Paris, in which he died. Nowadays, Sainte Marguerite is a maritime museum, and tourists can see the cell in which the man in the iron mask was kept. And the man in the iron mask died on November the 19th in 1703 at the Bastille, while he was confessing to a priest. Like in the movie The Man in the Iron Mask with Leonardo DiCaprio, released in 1998. And this particular was real. And they said that he died from a sudden illness. And the cell was immediately burnt. Like in the movie, it was the man in the iron mask, prisoner dead, was buried in the Fortress Parish Church, St. Paul de Champs, and a false name was put into the register. Unfortunately, the church and its yard no longer exists. Many people with whom I spoke, I was really surprised talking about this mystery, because many of these people with whom I talked don't wonder this question. At that time, there wasn't the proof of DNA. And even nowadays, it is difficult difficult to find a DNA in an almost burnt body. So, are we sure that the real man in the Iron Mask really died that day? Could he have found a way to escape, like in the movie The Man in the Iron Mask by Randall Wallace, released in 1998, when one of the greatest actors of the world and one of my favorite actors ever, absolutely, Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio, who played the role of the evilish, heartless King Louis XIV, so-called the Sun King, and the part of the twin who was innocent and good and imprisoned in the Bastille, Philippe. Really, Leonardo DiCaprio is great. I remember that immediately when The Man in the Iron Mask was released at the cinema, immediately I had the ticket and I was in the first row. And immediately when the VHS was out, I immediately bought it. I think that I watched The Man in the Iron Mask at least 100, 200, 300. I've really lost the count, because every time I want to watch a movie, I watch The Man in the Iron Mask. And there are great actors, Leonardo DiCaprio, but also Jeremy Irons, Gerard Depardieu, John Malkovich, Annie Parilod, and many others. Really a masterpiece movie. So, now real facts that few people can reveal you, because I studied and investigated this case of The Man in the Iron Mask. Really, I've really deepened this mystery. So, I can tell you that The Man in the Iron Mask was born in Paris for sure, but we don't know the exact day or month when he was born. Maybe because he was the secret twin of the Sun King. In all these centuries, so many hypotheses about his real identity have been made. But I can tell you that I tell you only the hypotheses, and I also will show you in few minutes many videos that many hypotheses in all these centuries are absolutely to rule out, because these people suspected to be the Man in the Iron Mask died in another period before the official death of the Man in the Iron Mask. at the Bastille, or because other ones had been seen. Meanwhile, the prisoner with the iron mask was in jail, so it was impossible that these people were the real men in the iron mask. So I don't tell you all these hypothetical candidates, the candidates that are to rule out, because it's for sure that they weren't the men in the iron mask. So many movies, books, cartoons, and many movies had been made about the man in the iron mask. The man in the iron mask of 1998 was based on the novel by Alexandre Dumas, The Viscount of Bragelonne. I want to remind you that Alexandre Dumas also wrote The Count of Monte Cristo and other masterpieces. Dumas got inspired by the researches made by the famous philosopher Voltaire, who was imprisoned into the Bastille in 1717 for a short time, and he got to know by several guards that several years before there had been a strange prisoner wearing an iron mask, and so called the man in the iron mask. So, even if the punishment was so cruel and tough, this prisoner enjoyed of favor treatments as good and abundant food, expensive, beautiful clothes, the possibility to keep and read books in his cell, and even to play a lute. When Voltaire got out of prison, started to make researches, he deepened this case, and he discovered that the man in the iron mask died on November the 19th, 1703, from a sudden illness while he was confessing to a priest confessor. And then immediately his cell was burnt, and his corpse was buried in the cemetery of Saint Paul des Champs, Paris. And now there are important controversies. The governor of the Bastille from 1819 the governor of the Bastille from 1698 was Benigne Duvogne de Saint-Mars, who attended the funeral of the man in the iron mask. And the doctor of the Bastille stated that the prisoner was about 60 years old, while on the act act of burial, there was written that he was 45 years old. And so strange and disquieting things. Think about that. His cell was immediately burned, and a few times later it was whitewashed. The furniture was completely removed, and all the personal effects of the prisoner with the iron mask completely destroyed. And into the coffin there had been put some drugs to facilitate the rapid decomposition of the body, in a way that the body was easily destroyed, decomposed in a respectful way, and not with other not respectful ways, like for example with a quick lime. The strict guidelines on the treatment of the prisoner, the man in the iron mask came directly to Saint Mary's, his jailer, from the French Minister of War, the Marquis of Louveau. These are official documents, and these are the very severe, very strict instructions. The prisoner, the man in the iron mask, couldn't speak with anybody except the priest confessor, and only during the confession. He could speak with the commanding officer of the guard only when he wanted to ask something about his imprisonment, and it was strictly forbidden every other topic. And he could speak with a doctor when he was very ill. So think about this at this point. Think about this. This prisoner, the fact that for all of his lifetime he had to wear this iron mask, implying something more than for example, political prisoner who could be condemned to death penalty. It was very easy during the monarchy of the Sun King. Think about that. It was very easy to be condemned to death penalty and to have the head cut off. So, even if he was an enemy who had discovered terrible secrets, scandals about the King Louis XIV, could have been condemned to death easily. Instead, this prisoner was condemned to wear an iron mask for all of his life. And there is written that the mask pointed. There was some nothing to hide in his face. The only sight of his face would have created serious problems and suspects. So it was a well recognizable face. And as I told you before, if this prisoner knew something that could have been a great threat for King Louis XIV or the monarchy itself, they could condemn him to death. Why? Why? If he was a normal enemy, why not to condemn him to death penalty? Because if he was a person who had royal blood bound with the king couldn't order his death, because this would have caused a curse on him and on the monarchy. This was the mentality of that period. So this keeps on validating the hypothesis of a royal-blooded person. So I think that the two main hypotheses, at least according to me, and then now I'll show you some proofs about my suspicions. I think that the man in the iron mask was or a step brother of King Louis XIV, or the twin, like in the Man in the Iron Mask movie. And this is official. At retainer Laborde, King Louis XIV confided these exact words. I pity him, but his imprisonment doesn't wrong others than himself, and this imprisonment prevented great disaster. You don't have to know it. So let's watch these videos.
Do know about the true man in the Iron Mask. In July 1669, the Marquis de Louvois sent a letter on behalf of King Louis XIV to the governor of Pignerol prison, informing him that a new resident was en route. According to Britannica, the correspondence named the prisoner as Eustache Dauguerre, a humble valet arrested on charges that remain hazy. Whatever those charges were, though, the cell with extra doors was built to minimize contact, and his caretaker was given strict instructions only to check on him once per day, and, on pain of death, to limit the scope of conversation to the absolute bare minimum necessary. The prisoner then remained in the cell for the next 34 years, becoming known as the Man in the Iron Mask. So who was he? What was his crime? And did he really wear a skillet on his face for 30 plus years? The answer to that last
These were really real paintings and drawings of the real man in the Iron Mask.
The mask was iron or cloth, though. It's true that the prisoner's identity was a carefully guarded secret. Curious minds have been launching theories like clay pigeons for hundreds of years, only to see them shot down by people who probably love starting their sentences with the word actually. Some records point to a real Eustache Dauguerre, a valet who witnessed or participated in some embarrassing church-related skullduggery involving either misappropriation of funds or, and this is a stretch, a black mass ritual. But while there...
Who was the man in the iron mask?
Plot twist, the secret biological father of Louis XIV, stating that Louis XIII had been estranged from his wife for more than a decade when the bouncing bundle of monarchic joy was born. So someone else had to be the father. Another theory, according to ancient origins, is that the prisoner was Vivien de Boulogne, a French general who was dishonored after his withdrawal of troops from the siege of Cuneo in 1691. The dates in question don't add up at all, but coded letters from King Louis XIV make for a compelling case. The famous author Voltaire theorized that the man in the iron mask was an illegitimate older brother of Louis XIV, the son of Cardinal Jules Mazarin and the Queen of France. But Voltaire was a notorious pot stirrer. And even more famously, writer Alexandre Dumas weighed in on this real-life mystery, suggesting that the prisoner was Louis XIV's identical twin brother, a story that was turned into the 1998 Leonardo DiCaprio film, The Man in the Iron Mask, just one of several film adaptations of this tale.
You knew there was a man of such resemblance?
He is my brother.
Brother?
My twin.
Whatever the case, records from the Bastille, where the mystery man was moved in 1698, indicate that the prisoner died in November 1703 and was buried under the name Marchioli. Was there a cryptic secret meaning to this name? And is it...
The man in the iron mask.
The Iron Mask is an exploration to King Louis XIV, the Musketeers, and a mysterious masked prisoner. In 1698, a prisoner was moved into the Bastille prison. He was described as a man who was always masked, and his name never pronounced. Moved from prison to prison, he never stayed in one place for too long. He was guarded by French musketeers, as he was brought to the Bastille where he was locked away and kept a secret from the world. The prisoner died in Bastille prison in 1703, only 5 years after arriving. His clothes burned, the walls of his cell scraped down, washed, and left without a trace of his existence. His name never appeared in any records, and the death of this mysterious masked man captivated the nation. Just who was the mysterious man? Why was he hidden away? And why was his face covered by a mask? Stories of this man have made their way from history into fiction, the most famous of which came from a larger work from Alexandre Dumas, The Victim of Brajolaine 10 years later, written in 1857. In it, we follow the story of 4 musketeers, D'Artagnan, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, and their connection with the masked prisoner. This story has captured the hearts of readers and moviegoers ever since, including this 1998 interpretation. And over the course of this review, I'm going to go over the real history of the period and discuss the theories of who this person might have been. This is the Man in the Iron Mask. 62. During this time, France was undergoing a lot of change. A famine had struck the countryside as crops failed, and harvests came up short. Louis had only just come to power, and perhaps didn't know how to best handle the food shortage.
I am a young king. But I am king.
Known as the Sun King, Louis XIV was named King of France in 1643, although he didn't take over full control from his regent Cardinal Mazarin until 1661. He ruled as an absolute monarch, which is perhaps best explained by his own words, "L'état c'est moi," or "I am the state." He believed he had divine right, chosen directly by God to rule over the people of France. Louis ended up not dealing with the food crisis, and instead raised taxes over the peasantry to increase his treasury. Starved and angry, the peasants rebelled, as they often did in France due to massive social inequality, and in response, King Louis sent in the troops to repress the rebellion. In the 17th century, France had only 3 main social classes. Life of luxury really distanced him from the struggles faced by his people.
As your advisors, we feel it is our duty. Yes, our duty to inform you that there are riots in Paris.
Riots? But Paris is the most beautiful city in the world. Why should my people feel anything but pride and contentment?
Well, of course, Majesty, I'm sure they are content and proud. But they are also starving.
As the film accurately portrays, King Louis really wasn't that concerned about the riots. If you look through his own memoirs, you would find barely any mention of them. However, a letter from the Archbishop Fenelon to the king proves that not only were the people starving and in rebellion, but that the king must have known about it. And I quote, "Your peoples, whom you should love like your children, are starving. Cultivate." To perfectly demonstrates King Louis's priorities. The movie absolutely nails his portrayal, because what money he didn't blow on Versailles and lavish parties, Louis spent on costly wars with the Dutch and Spanish. Despite the famine back home, his troops could always count on being well fed.
We have stocks on the wharves right now, don't we? We can distribute that.
But, Majesty, that food is spoiling. That is why it was not sent to the army.
Then you must hurry.
What an excellent idea, Your Majesty.
In the film, we see Louis planning his war against the Dutch, which did happen, but not in 1662. Louis's conflict with the Dutch started in 1672, a full 10 years after the movie. In fact, during this time, France would be fighting two conflicts to expand its territory, first against the Spanish and then later against the Dutch. In the territory above France, in what is now
Alexandre
became famous for writing stories about the Musketeers, an elite group of soldiers that served the King of France. The Musketeers were originally created by Louis XIII, Louis XIV's father, in 1622, and they weren't officially disbanded until well after the French Revolution in 1816. There were many Musketeers over the years, and 4 of them have been memorialized in Alexandre Dumas' works D'Artagnan, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis. Alexandre Dumas first introduced these characters in his book The Three Musketeers in 1844. And like in his later book, The Man in the Iron Mask, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis make up the traditional 3 Musketeers, and D'Artagnan is introduced as a younger character that challenges our trio. And what's really great about Dumas as a writer and quasi-historian is that he weaves so well French history in his fiction, and I love me some good historical fiction. But were D'Artagnan and the 3 Musketeers based on real-life musketeers? Well, actually yes. Athos, played by John Malkovich, was based on Armand de Athos. The real Athos joined the Musketeers in 1640, but was killed in a duel in 1643.
Revolution! Open war!
Blood in the streets.
Porthos, played by Gerard Depardieu, was based on Isaac de Porthos, and fun fact, the real Porthos and Athos were cousins. Porthos joined the Musketeers from 1642 to 1654, and out of all the Musketeers in the movie, Porthos is the womanizer, although he complains frequently of aches, pains, and generally being old.
Stop praying and revel with me, Aramis. I need my spirits lift. I'm old, I'm weak, my strength is gone.
Porthos, I'm praying.
Aramis, played by Jeremy Irons, was based on Reed the Aramis. He served in the Musketeers from 1640 to 1648, and in the film he's a Jesuit priest, although in the books he's more of a womanizer like Porthos.
Ah, Aramis.
Your Majesty.
You are a priest. But once you're a musketeer, I, like my father before me, have trusted you with the gravest of missions.
And finally, D'Artagnan, played by Gabriel Byrne, who was based on Charles de Batz de Casimir d'Artagnan. Although not in 1662, as the movie says, but from 1667 until his death at the siege of Maastricht in 1673.
Look at the faces of these men. How they admire and fear you. With the great D'Artagnan watching over me, who in France would be possibly such a fool as to try and do me harm?
A fool's blade can be sharper than his brain.
By 1662, in the book, the film, and in real life, the
So,
only musketeer out of
look
the 4
at
that was
this
actively serving
now,
was D'Artagnan. So while the real
unlosable.
Athos, Porthos, and Aramis served as musketeers at the same time, although briefly, the real D'Artagnan didn't join until much later, after all 3 men had left or died. In the film, Athos' son Raoul and his soon-to-be fiancée Christine attend one of Louis's lavish parties. Raoul wants to follow in his father's footsteps and join the Musketeers, but King Louis sees Christine and decides he wants her as his mistress and sends Raoul to die on the front lines of battle. Distraught over the death of his son, Athos storms Versailles intent on killing the king. He's stopped by D'Artagnan and the 2 take different paths. Athos wants to see Louis gone, and D'Artagnan is intent on serving the king and making him nicer?
I need you. All for one, one for all.
You cannot ask me to betray my king. I have sworn an oath. When a king is dishonorable, you are removed from your oath of honor. An oath is an oath precisely because it cannot be removed. Why do you follow him, D'Artagnan? Why? What we fought for is greater than king or rank or reward. What do you fight for now? I fight for the belief that every man can be better. Even Louis.
Splitting up from D'Artagnan, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis scheme a plot to replace the king with the man in the iron mask.
Before going on, I want to warn you that in this documentary there is spoiler alert. I'm going to reveal you how the movie The Man in the Iron Mask 1998 will end up and many important facts during this movie and other things. So now you know it. And so I can go on.
A figure who, during King Louis's reign, was sent to prison and forced to live with his face covered by a mask. Except it wasn't an iron mask, but a black velvet one. But regardless, nobody knew what he looked like, and to this day his identity remains a mystery. Voltaire, the French philosopher who was born during Louis's reign, was one of the first to write about this mysterious figure and popularized the idea that he wore an iron mask. In his book, The Age of Louis XIV, Voltaire wrote, and I quote, "The Iron Mask was undoubtedly a brother and an elder brother of Louis XIV. For Voltaire, and later Dumas, the fact that the prisoner was hidden away and had his face covered meant that his face was the reason for his imprisonment. And who better to hide away than the brother of the king, a credible threat to Louis's power and control over France."
You knew there was a man of such resemblance.
He is my brother.
Brother.
My twin. My blood. A fact which has kept him alive until now.
Fascinated by Voltaire's description of a man in an iron mask, even though it was wrong, Dumas wrote an essay speculating on his identity before writing his now famous novel. In reality, King Louis did have a brother named Philippe, but he wasn't a twin. Philippe was born in 1640, 2 years after his brother King Louis, and has a well-documented history as the Duke of Orleans. So, who was the real guy, if not a blood relative of Louis XIV? Philippe out of a prison island. This island was the Ile de Lorraine just off the coast of Cannes, and although the man in the iron mask was moved from prison to prison, including the famous Bastille prison, this is where he spent a decent amount of his sentence. Isolated and alone, the character Philippe spent 6 years in the prison until he smuggled out by hiding under Aramis's cloak.
Well, I'm a genius, not an engineer.
Aramis then switches Philippe with a strikingly similar corpse sporting the same mask and tells the jailer they should burn it because he likely has the plague.
When the mask is taken away.
Rescued from the prison, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis teach him how to act like his twin brother, the king. And the plan is to switch King Louis with Philippe at a masquerade ball and hide Louis away, and then France would have a proper king.
We're offering you a chance to be king.
No. You're offering me a chance to pretend to be king. A king that you hate.
Not everyone hates him.
Don't you? Why should I become him? Until you give me a reason, I won't do it.
Philippe is right. We haven't given him a reason to do what we ask of him. Once all of us believed in spending our lives in the service of something greater than ourselves. Aramis had his faith, Porthos his lust for life, D'Artagnan his devotion, and I had Raoul. But we all had a common dream, that one day we would finally be able to serve a king worthy of the throne. It is what we dreamt, what we bled for, and what we have spent a lifetime waiting to see.
Ultimately, their plan is thwarted by D'Artagnan, and in an attempt to flee Versailles, King Louis and D'Artagnan capture Philippe. Athos, Porthos, and Aramis don their old-school traditional musketeer outfits and go rescue Philippe from the Bastille prison. Meanwhile, D'Artagnan learns that Philippe is not just an imposter, but Louis's twin. And it's here that we learn that D'Artagnan is the father of the twins, as he's been in love with the Queen Mother for most of his life, and they had an affair almost 24 years ago. So that explains why he put up with King Louis being so awful this whole time. Faced with this new information, D'Artagnan decides to help his old friends rescue Philippe from the Bastille, reveals that he's the father of the twins, and dies protecting Philippe from Louis. And thus our film ends. Louis is imprisoned in the mask, and Philippe gets to rule in his stead, and becomes France's greatest king?
The king known as Louis XIV.
This is not what really happened in France. The movie is not faithful to the historical events, at least on this part. Listen to it.
After 1662, there were more famines, more hunger riots, and more wars. As territorial expansion continued into the 18th century, even taxation got worse. The absolute monarchy that Louis so boldly exemplified was so resented after his exploits that future King Louis XVI paid for it with his head.
It's ludicrous.
Overall, despite being based on historical fiction and taking more than a few liberties to make the story richer, The Man in the Iron Mask does give us a good insight into the life of the nobility in 17th century France, as well as the Musketeers. The legend of the Man in the Iron Mask lives on, immortalized in fiction and film forever.
We feared the mask would destroy you.
I wear the mask. It does not wear me.
And the Iron Mask began as a rumor. In 1687 and 1698, reports of the mysterious prisoner's transfer from various prisons circulated among the public. The reports were consistent in mentioning the prisoner wore an iron mask each time spectators saw him. These accounts fit with first-hand descriptions of the man from prison officials and guards from the period. In his memoir, one Bastille guard wrote the tale of a man who is always masked and whose name is never pronounced. Because the mask obscured the prisoner's identity, it ultimately led to persistent rumors and wild speculation on who he was and why Louis XIV imprisoned him in the first place. Further deepening the mystery, the prison supposedly incinerated everything he owned after his death in 1703. Other reports and rumors say authorities also scrubbed the walls of his prison cell clean following his death. In 1717, Voltaire found himself incarcerated at the Bastille after writing a particularly cutting verse about a regent in one of his works. While there, he collected stories about the mysterious masked man from older prisoners who claimed they knew him. Voltaire took some creative liberties with the story. His version was likely the first to add the bit about the mask being iron. His description made the mask sound like something from the movie Saw. In one description, he wrote, "The chin of the mask was composed of steel springs, which gave him liberty to eat with it on." Voltaire's story asserts the prisoner must have been important because he received good food, had good manners, received regular visits from the governor, and even played guitar.
Alexandre Dumas
began his career writing plays and magazine articles. Later, he penned several popular novels, including The Count of Monte Cristo, The Corsican Brothers, and The Three Musketeers. Captivated by the story of the mysterious prisoner, Dumas decided to base a character in one of his novels on Doge. Dumas wrote about the Man in the Iron Mask in the third volume of the D'Artagnan Romances. In The Vicomte de Bragelonne, Dumas' take on the mysterious prisoner eventually became one of the most popular. In the story, Dumas put forth the idea that the Man in the Iron Mask was the twin brother of Louis XIV. As such, he presented a threat to the king's legitimacy. The idea persisted and became the basis of the 1998 film adaptation of the tale, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, although it departed quite a bit from the source material. Before Sannino came along, there was no shortage of theories about the prisoner's identity. Many of these theories pointed to members of the royal family. Some thought the man might have been Louis de Bourbon, the banished son of Louis XIV. Others surmised the prisoner to be the king's cousin, Francois de Bourbon. Maybe the masked man was an Italian count named Ercole Mattioli, imprisoned for double-crossing the king. However, these were unlikely as Mattioli died in 1694, and Francois de Bourbon fell in battle while the prisoner served his time. From there, things get weirder.
Mysterious things it contains is a skeleton wearing an iron mask.
And now, official documents even after all this time. Are you ready to watch what it's presumed to be the real Iron Mask? Watch it.
Discovered at a street market at the end of the 19th century before changing.
Now, are you ready to watch the real cell in which the man in the iron mask stayed during his imprisonment in the island of Saint Marguerite? Okay, let's watch it.
Ladies, friends, rumours about a mysterious prisoner began to spread throughout the country. The dramatic story was that an anonymous man had been imprisoned on the express orders of the French King Louis XIV. His identity was a secret, and his face was obscured as he was being forced to wear an iron mask. The prisoner was always in the custody of a former musketeer, Benjamin de Saint-Mars. The two men moved in 1687 from fortresses in the Alps to the citadel of Sainte Marguerite, a small Mediterranean island near the coast of Cannes in southern France. When Saint-Mars was appointed governor of the Bastille in 1698, the pair transferred again to Paris. A Bastille official later wrote of the strange accompaniment of his new superior by a mystery man who was always masked and whose name is never uttered. When the mystery prisoner passed away, it was documented that a man in his 50s had been interred at the St. Paul Cemetery in Paris and his clothes and possessions burned at dawn. It was recorded that the walls of his prison cells were even scraped and whitewashed. The unknown prisoner's unbearable life was said to have been decreed directly from the French throne. King Louis XIV was known by supporters as the Sun King.
The Sun King was considered good only by his supporters.
His opponents viewed him as a near tyrant whose belief in divine right and the concept that he reigned as God's representative on earth had rendered France a virtual police state. For enlightenment thinkers of the time was the writer and philosopher Voltaire, who postulated that the prisoner was a brother of Louis XIV. Although earlier accounts had described a mask of cotton or velvet, Voltaire believed that the mask was constructed of iron and even had a built-in chin made of steel springs to enable the prisoner to eat while wearing it. Voltaire had been imprisoned in the Bastille in 1717 and claimed that he'd been told the masked man's story by his oldest inmates. He outlined the reputed qualities of the anonymous prisoner as being of majestic height, young, of a graceful and noble figure. He was undoubtedly a person of importance with refined manners, and he played the guitar. The mystery prisoner was also reportedly served fine food, precluded any contact with the other prisoners, and visited only by the governor. What became the predominant theory of the prisoner's identity, that the man in the iron mask was in fact Louis XIV's twin brother Philippe, who had been born first and was seen as a threat by the repressive Sun King. In recent years, this theory became favoured, with popular Hollywood films depicting the plight of the unjustly imprisoned twin brother. Logic dictates that there must have been a strong reason for the obsessive covering of the man's face.
Incredible official documents!
Present from 1669 until his death on November 19, 1703. The prisoner was about 60 years old when he died. His identity remains the subject of speculation to this day. The first public mention of him is in a letter from Elizabeth Charlotte of the Palatinate to Sophia of the Palatinate in October 1711. La Palatine explicitly mentions that the prisoner had to wear a mask at all times, including when he was eating or sleeping.
Voltaire theorized
that the prisoner was a twin brother of Louis XIV, raised by Anne of Austria and Mazarin away from court, a theory which Alexandre Dumas popularized in his novel at a later date. Several hundreds of people were present at Louis XIV's birth. It was only a few hours later that the queen withdrew with a midwife and lady-in-waiting. According to this theory, another twin would have been born after the withdrawal of the queen. The boy would have been the heir to the throne in case of the death of his older twin, and was therefore taken away by Cardinal Richelieu to prevent confusion. The doubts about this theory are based, however, on the fact that another possible heir to the throne would have been most welcome to Richelieu and the Queen, given the infant mortality rate at the time. The main argument in favor of this theory seems to be that even in the 1690s, there were strict instructions that the face of the prisoner should not be recognizable.
The man in the iron mask could have been the step-brother of Louis the 14th. Listen to it.
To this theory, the man in the iron mask was an illegitimate child of Anne of Austria who lived estranged from her husband for many years. As possible fathers, theorists indicate Mazarin, the Duke of Buckingham, and some other less-known individuals. However, an illegitimate child of Anne of Austria would have had no claim to the throne at all, since, according to the Salic law of succession, only the male line of the royal house counted. Thus, there would have been no point in imprisoning the child at all.
The man in the iron mask.
In the iron mask was Marc de Morelli, the son-in-law of Anne of Austria's personal physician, who had performed an autopsy on Louis XIII, which revealed his inability to procreate. Afterwards, the good doctor would have entrusted this secret to his son-in-law. However, Morelli died in 1680, and his father-in-law was not present at the autopsy, as he was not yet the Queen's personal physician at the time. This theory is therefore easily debunked. That the prisoner was a servant named Eustache d'Auger or another servant named Martin who was guilty of treason. Some other candidates' names have been dropped as well, but none of the theories have provided certainty about the identity of the prisoner. The weak point of many of the hypotheses is that they rely on a relationship between Louis XIV and the prisoner. However,
in the Iron Mask is a name given to an unidentified prisoner who was arrested in 1669 or 1670 and later on held in a number of French prisons, most notably the Bastille and the fortress of Pignerol. He had the same jailer called Benin de Verne de Saint-Marc holding him in custody for a period of 34 years. The most interesting thing about this prisoner was that throughout his captivity he was forced to wear some sort of a mask to conceal his identity. The 14th minister, Marquis de Louvois, sent a letter to the jailer Saint-Marc, where he wrote that a prisoner named Eustache d'Auger was due to arrive in the next month or so. At that time, the prison of Pignerol held only a small number of prisoners, most notably the ones that were considered an embarrassment to the state. In his letters to Louvois, Saint-Marc described the prisoner as a quiet man, given no trouble compared to his other prisoners, which were always complaining or constantly trying to escape. In subsequent years, the jailer Saint-Marc took the masked prisoner everywhere where his new post would be, most notably the exile fortress, the Saint-Marguerite prison, and the prison of Bastille. However, in 1711, King Louis's sister-in-law Elizabeth Charlotte sent a letter to her Aunt Sophia in which she stated that the prisoner had 2 musketeers at his side at all times to kill him if he ever removed his mask. She also described him as very devout and said that he was well treated and received everything that he desired. This is kind of odd because why would the king's sister-in-law write anything about the masked prisoner 8 years after his death? There are a number of theories about the prisoner's identity, ranging from a king's close relative to a noble that did something embarrassing for the French nation or otherwise.
Voltaire claimed
that the masked prisoner was an illegitimate son of Anne of Austria and Cardinal Mazarin, but the reliability of this claim is uncertain. Theory number 2, King's twin brother. One of the most accepted theories is that the masked prisoner was in fact a twin brother of Louis XIV, born second and hidden in order to avoid any dispute over the throne. Supporting this theory is the fact that Louis XIV's genealogy shows many twin births, most notably from the Capetian dynasty and the House of Bourbon.
And if the movie The Man in the Iron Mask 1998, maybe Randall Wallace got very close to the truth of the identity of the man in the iron mask. Look at this!
The movie is set in the 17th century, where France is under the rule of King Louis XIV. The city of Paris is in a state of turmoil, as most of the population is either starving or sent to war. This has caused a huge uproar in the city, and riots are in full swing. However, instead of fulfilling their demands, the king locks the rioters in dilapidated prisons, where they are left to die a slow and painful death. Among them is an unknown man, who is known by the nickname, the Man in the Iron Mask. In the next...
And these are the four musketeers, played by Athos on your left, played by the incredible John Malkovich. Then we have Porthos, played by Gerard Depardieu, very great French actor. Then we have the great Gabriel Byrne, who played the role of D'Artagnan. And then we have Aramis, played by the great Jeremy Irons.
Popular musketeers in the past, but only D'Artagnan remains loyal to the king now. As for the other three musketeers, Aramis has become a reverend, Porthos has become a drunkard who only cares about women, and Athos has retired to his farm. As Porthos and Aramis live together, they often quarrel because of their contrasting lifestyles. One day, while they are at it, they are visited by D'Artagnan, who informs the duo that the king wants to see them. Elsewhere, Athos hands his son, Raoul, his wife's ring, so that he can propose to his girlfriend. Turns out that Athos's wife died long about an upcoming war. Just then, one of his consultants, Pierre, informs him about the riots in the city. He also suggests they distribute the food from the army reserves so that the riots will stop. However, King Louis orders him to distribute rotten food instead. Meanwhile, Aramis arrives at the palace, and the king welcomes him warmly. The king then orders Aramis to find the leader of the Jesuits, who has been causing civil unrest. Not only that, he also orders the former musketeer to eliminate the so-called traitor in the name of God and France. Aramis is hesitant about the plan, but he has no choice but to agree. Meanwhile, a special occasion is about to Raoul is with his girlfriend, Christine. As the duo is walking, the king spots Christine from afar and gets smitten by her instantly. He then organizes a game and separates Raoul from his girlfriend, just as he is about to propose. As everyone is busy with the game, the king draws Christine near his palace and tries getting close to her. However, Christine lets him know that she is faithful to Raoul. Despite this, the king attempts to kiss her, but just then, they are distracted by D'Artagnan, who has been watching them closely from nearby. Suddenly, a Jesuit spy comes running to assassinate King Louis, but D'Artagnan manages to eliminate him with his insane sword throw. The king is taken aback by the incident, while Raoul quickly takes Christine away. That night,
Raoul!
And informs the duo that he couldn't propose to Christine, and now he has been drafted for war against the Dutch. This enrages Athos, who suspects the greedy king of sending away his son so that he can have Christine all to himself. D'Artagnan also feels sorry for the young man and assures Athos. But before advancing, he hands over a letter to another general, requesting him to deliver it to the royal palace. Soon, he leads the charge, but unfortunately, a Dutch cannon explodes near him, killing him instantly. The news of his death quickly reaches Christine and his father, and both of them break down in tears. However, Athos develops a rage for vengeance, and he heads to the palace to confront the king. On reaching, he takes down several musketeers alone, but D'Artagnan quickly subdues him. He then pleads with his friend to calm down so that he doesn't suffer the same fate his son did. Athos agrees to walk away, but he vows to take revenge against the king. Before leaving, he assures her that all he wants is her happiness. He then takes her to a private room, and the duo start making out. Meanwhile, Aramis gathers his old musketeer friends inside the catacombs of Paris and briefs them about his secret mission. He reveals that King Louis has assigned him to track down and eliminate the Jesuit leader before he can cause any more riots. However, the only problem is that he is the Jesuit leader himself. The revelation stuns his friends, but Athos and Porthos quickly agree to support his plans. On the contrary, D'Artagnan refuses to help them, as he is loyal to the king. Hearing this, Athos bursts in
And
anger
now,
and confronts
look
D'Artagnan.
at the escape!
Mask is peeking at the open sky, wondering when he'll be out. Meanwhile, the three musketeer friends arrive there on a boat, disguised as foreigners. Aramis pretends to be a priest, and he manages to enter the prisoner's cell to read his monthly prayers. Turns out that he's carrying a corpse who's wearing an iron mask, similar to that of the prisoner. Aramis then hides the boy inside his body and calls out to the guards, telling them that the prisoner died of a plague virus. Scared, the guards immediately burn the corpse, leaving no trace behind. Following this, the group carefully escapes the place and reaches a countryside house. There, they clean up the prisoner, and in a shocking turn of events, he is revealed to be King Louis's twin brother, Philippe. Philippe mentions that he used to live peacefully in a farm, but one day, some soldiers forcefully took him away to a prison and confined him to a mask. Later, Aramis finally reveals the truth to him. Turns out that after his mother, Anne, gave birth to the twins, their father, King Louis XIII, decided to discard one son to avoid any territorial conflicts between them. As a result, Philippe was hidden far away in the prison of Bastille. Only on his death day, the king revealed it to his wife and to his other son, King Louis XIV. Anne desperately tried to bring her son back, but the greedy king made sure his twin brother would never see the light again by concealing his face with an iron mask. Moreover, Aramis reveals that he was the one who put the mask on Philippe. He is sorry for the atrocities Philippe has been through and vows to restore his birthright by replacing him with King Louis. However, his friends are skeptical about the plan, as they think it is too dangerous. Back in the palace, King Louis gets a message informing his twin's death, but he is unconcerned by it. He then asks his men to deliver the news to his mother and opens another box. There, he finds the iron mask and is taken aback. Meanwhile, after getting the news,
in the beginning, Philippe is skeptical, but
agrees when the musketeers share their dream of a unified France, where all the people can live peacefully. Following this, the three start teaching Philippe on how to act like a king, and they practice day and night. Meanwhile, as Christine finally starts getting used to the royalty of the palace, she suddenly gets the letter that Raoul had sent her before dying. There, Raoul has predicted his death, and also mentioned that he forgives her for being with the king. The letter devastates Christine, and she realizes that the king orchestrated her lover's death. Elsewhere, Aramis meets Anne at a confessional and mentions that
and
Philippe is
then
alive.
look what happens at this.
Elegantly, Aramis, Athos, Porthos, and Philippe also arrive, disguised in fancy costumes. When the king joins the crowd to dance, he starts seeing several people with iron masks, making him dizzy. Turns out that the musketeers had planned it all along. When the king enters his room, the group takes the opportunity and sneaks inside from the secret entrance. There, Aramis confronts the king and knocks him unconscious. When he wakes up, he finds his brother, Philippe, dressed like the king. Before he can call for help, he is gagged and covered by Porthos, while Philippe nervously leaves the room to confront the crowd. Outside, as Philippe sits on the throne for the first time, Christine suddenly confronts him and calls him a killer. However, instead of apprehending her like Louis normally would, he calms her down by promising to make things right again. This surprises the crowd, and D'Artagnan also begins to suspect him. He then orders the guards to be on high alert and escorts Philippe to the underground dock. Downstairs, the three musketeers, along with Louis, make their way to the port where their boat awaits. Suddenly, they are spotted by the guards, and a lengthy tussle ensues. Despite being outnumbered, the three musketeers show exemplary fighting skills and manage by the guards, led by D'Artagnan. The friends have an intense face-off, but just then, Athos uncovers King Louis's face and threatens to kill him. D'Artagnan is shocked by the impostor, and he orders his guards to open the gate. Following this, the two groups trade the boys, and as the musketeers are about to depart with Philippe, the guards again recapture him, forcing Athos, Porthos, and Aramis to flee alone.
And learns that King Louis and Philippe are brothers. He then begs that Louis shows mercy towards Philippe. Louis orders D'Artagnan to find and kill the three musketeers and sends Philippe back to prison and back to his mask. I didn't think much of this scene at first, but upon rewatching it, this is an absolutely incredible performance by DiCaprio. He plays both sides of this conversation beautifully, and during my initial viewing, it didn't even seem impressive because it genuinely felt like two different people. This leads to the climactic final act where D'Artagnan joins forces with Porthos, Athos, and Aramis to break Philippe out of prison. The action in the scene is genuinely well done and fits the story well. Here we also get the big reveal that Philippe and Louis are D'Artagnan's sons.
King Louis becomes enraged and swings a dagger at Philippe, but D'Artagnan gets in the way and takes the hit. Sadly, he passes away among his friends, sons, and army generals. Philippe is left devastated, but soon he swaps clothes with his brother and puts him in an iron mask. He then orders the guards to take the impostor away and announces that Aramis, Athos, and Porthos are his new royal advisors. In the final scene of the movie, King Philippe, disguised as King Louis XIV, along with the three musketeers, attend D'Artagnan's funeral. There, Philippe approaches Athos and expresses his desire to be his son, and the latter gladly agrees.
So, I made you watch incredible documents of many centuries ago. So you can make an opinion of your own. Personally, I told you that having studied documents and my personal hypotheses are two. First one, the twin of King Louis XIV. Second hypothesis, the older brother of the Sun King, because the Queen had been separated from her husband, who was away for affairs, wars, and so she could have her former son and a stepbrother who could be a threat to the throne. These are my two hypotheses. But everybody is free to have an opinion of your own. I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. See you soon. Stay tuned.